Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Ike's Political Minutes. Today we will be simulating the 2024 Republican presidential primary, assuming that it is just between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Every other candidate drops out for one reason or another. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense because, as we can see right now, Donald Trump and DeSantis are the only candidates who really have any kind of momentum in the primary. Like, if you can see right here, going to the Republican nomination polls, sure, Donald Trump leads widely, and DeSantis, he also has 22.4% of the vote. No other candidate gets above 5%. Nikki Haley is below 4%. So it really doesn't seem all that crazy to assume that all of these other candidates just drop out, and it really is just a two-man race between Trump and DeSantis. And without further ado, let's see how it goes, starting at the Iowa caucus, assuming that it is just Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis at this point. So, yeah, moving around here. So we can see with the Iowa caucus that Donald Trump right now leads DeSantis in the polls, and he leads him by roughly 22.4%. Now, I think that this lead will shrink with other candidates out of the race and more of their support consolidated behind DeSantis. I think that the same dynamic would happen in all of the other states as well, so I'm not going to repeat that, but I think that Donald Trump still would win it. I know that Ted Cruz won it in 2016, but I think that Trump this time around has really garnered much more of that populist conservative base in Iowa, but I think he would win it, and he would win it right by about 60%. Like, I would compare Iowa to the Hillary Clinton Bernie Sanders fight, where it was close. Bernie Sanders was more of the insurgent candidate who people found populist, but Hillary Clinton just had more of that establishment lock. So I think that Iowa narrowly would go to Trump. New Hampshire, however, DeSantis does have a higher ceiling here, because as we can see, in January, according to University of New Hampshire, DeSantis was leading by 12 points. And I get that that lead has gone down substantially and that Trump is back up, but I think that's partly because a lot of people just didn't even think DeSantis would run, or they were wondering if that might actually just be speculation. But now that he's back, I think he can make up lost ground, and I actually think that he can win big here. I think the same way that Bernie Sanders lost narrowly in Iowa, but then won big in New Hampshire, I think DeSantis can win big in New Hampshire as well. Like, let's say 72% of delegates, Trump gets the other 27%. So DeSantis with a slight lead here, and I think his lead would actually grow, especially in Nevada, because what you have to understand is that Ron DeSantis does better in the Sun Belt than Donald Trump, and it's vice versa in the Rust Belt. Trump does better in the Rust Belt with a more populist conservative coalition. And there was actually a poll that came out head to head that showed that while Trump only narrowly beat Biden by 2 points in Iowa, DeSantis beat him by 6. And I think that translates over to the state party as well. So yeah, I think Ron DeSantis would honestly get like 76% of the delegates in Iowa, and Trump would get the remaining 24%. I think he'd get a huge win there. South Carolina, however, I think that Donald Trump would win there. Donald Trump is generally seen as the more credible of the two candidates when it comes to evangelical Christians, and also DeSantis, he just doesn't have as strong of a presence there. And I think that overall, South Carolina would land narrowly in Trump's column. Or actually, I think it would be very close because also you have Nikki Haley and Tim Scott, and both of them are popular. I think South Carolina does have the potential to be competitive. I just think that Trump does have a slight edge there. So we have DeSantis with a slight lead going into Super Tuesday. And this is where it's going to get interesting. So we're going to start with Alabama. I think that Trump wins Alabama pretty handily. His Roy Moore endorsements held up well there, and he generally has a strong presence. I say he gets 84% of the delegates there. And with Alaska, Alaska went to Ted Cruz. I think that Ron DeSantis can win there. They kind of like their unique conservatives who people generally haven't seen before. And with Arkansas, I think Trump also wins Arkansas handily, maybe even by a wider margin. They like their Tom Cotton style ultra conservative Republicans. I think he wins it 90-10 against DeSantis. And Colorado, I think that's an interesting state to look at. or wait a minute, no, that's just Democratic primary one. Sorry. And Georgia is interesting. Trump did win Georgia massively in the 2016 Republican primary, but if you look at Georgia right here, it's only very narrowly going to Trump against DeSantis, and a sizable portion backing Kemp or Haley. I think that DeSantis definitely has an appeal to Georgian voters, especially since it's right next to Florida, similar coalitions. I'd actually say that narrowly, DeSantis takes Georgia, though it's not by much because Trump still has a strong presence there. But you have to remember, too, that David Perdue, who is the Trump backed candidate, lost to Brian Kemp in the primary. So, another thing going for them, they might be a little less inclined to be for that Trumpian style candidate. And moving over to Massachusetts, I think that DeSantis would narrowly win Massachusetts as well, considering that he wins New Hampshire by such a wide margin. I think that Massachusetts is also in play. They like their Scott Brown style, more moderate kind of Republicans, or Charlie Baker, not so much the people that Trump has ousted and tried to replace. And I think that DeSantis narrowly wins Massachusetts as well. And with Minnesota went for Marco Rubio actually in the 2016 primary, the only state to do so. And yeah, I'd say DeSantis wins really big here. I'd say he wins 74% of the delegates to Trump's 25%. Close race so far. With Oklahoma and Texas. With these two states, both Ted Cruz won both of them, but I don't think that Ron DeSantis can. I think that Trump has a very strong hold on these Great Plains style traditional conservative voters, and they wouldn't be necessarily too inclined to vote for someone like DeSantis. So I'd say Trump gets pretty impressive margins in both states. Like I'd say 81% in Oklahoma, and a little closer, but I'd say 70% or 72% in Texas. He racks up some pretty big wins in both of those states. And with Vermont, I think that Vermont would go to DeSantis, similar with his New Hampshire Northeastern appeal, though, again, not by much. And in Virginia, we have to take a look because Trump did win Virginia in the primary on Super Tuesday, but if we look at Virginia, it's actually closer in the polls. Like, Trump only narrowly edges out DeSantis by 11 points, and a lot of other people might support Youngkin or Haley. So I think that ever so slightly, DeSantis wins Virginia. He wins it by, let's say, 59%. And finally, looking over to, let's see, what is next? Tennessee. Ah, yes. Once again, I believe that Donald Trump has a much stronger hold on these traditional conservative voters, the evangelical Christian bloc that usually breaks Republican. I'd say he wins it by 82%. So there you have it. Trump and DeSantis both having sizable delegate counts. It really is anyone's game at this point, but I'd say that Trump has the upper hand going into other states. I think that he's definitely won Super Tuesday. And going into the next states, now Ted Cruz did win Kansas. He won it by a very big margin, actually, and I think that it could be close, but I just don't think that DeSantis can appeal to that coalition of voters the same way Trump can. Kansas is much more populist in that sense, so I think that it is close because, again, Kansas did vote for Ted Cruz by a huge margin, but I'd say Trump wins it ever so narrowly. And now we move over to Kentucky. Kentucky is and Kentucky and West Virginia, these are two states where Trumpianism is just so strong. Like, it really resonates with these voters, especially given the lost sense of American cultural heritage, the lost sense of patriotism, and lost sense of coal jobs and other things. And I think that Trump wins almost all of the delegates in Kentucky. He wins it decisively, 97% to 2%. And moving over to Louisiana, I think that Trump's appeal to Southern voters and generally that bloc, once again, gets him a pretty sizable win there. And moving down to Maine, or up to Maine, I should say, I think DeSantis would win Maine. He would win it 63 with 36, his Northeastern appeal being strong. And at this point, I would say that Trump has won decisively. I mean, you could see DeSantis moving on, but Trump is ahead by over 200 delegates. It just seems hard to see how DeSantis can overcome that. I think that we could go on forecasting further into the future, but I think at this point it's fair to say that Trump probably has the nomination, though he did face a strong fight from Ron DeSantis. Anyway, thank you all for watching this video. Please comment down suggestions below. Please subscribe and hit that bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. Ike's Political Minute, out.